Hey everybody, this is herculespetix, founder, curator, docent, and gift shop employee of the herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies. Today we're going to be looking at Asylum, number 1 and number 2. Now there was another anthology horror comic called Asylum that came out a few years later from a different publisher, totally different comic. I have both of them, so one day in the near future I'll probably show you the other two. But I find this comic fascinating mainly because it was published by the New Comics Group, which is a short-run indie comics publisher in the late 80s. And it was so bizarre because they were just black and white comics during the black and white boom, kind of. But the comics they put out were like so beyond what a little black and white publisher would put out. They had a samurai comic called Young Master, written by Larry Hama, drawn by Val Myrick. They had a spin-off with Alex Niño art, and as we shall see in Asylum, they've got some heavy hitters here. The editor, her name is Valerie Jones. I don't know if she's related to Bruce Jones. I don't know. I couldn't find anything about her on the internet. But somehow she was connected. She knew comics, and maybe she worked at Warren. I have this vague memory. Maybe she was an editor at Warren. But this small little company in their, 2 years of publication, just incredible access to these like superstar artists. And I don't get it. I would love to hear a little history of New Comics Group or see a little documentary, like how they came to be, and with such amazing talent, how they went out of business so quick. So let's get back to Asylum. I'm sorry. If you couldn't tell already, this is going to be another drunk episode. I got really drunk today. I was at work, and I keep thinking about my last ex, who was a violent, mean person, and she was a terrible girlfriend. And yet, what makes it worse is that I can't stop thinking about her and kind of missing her in a sick way. It's so fucked up. I know that there's people out there who are mean and will do mean things to you, but the fact that I still have this affection for her and I miss her so much it's bacon my noodle, as they say in The Matrix. It's really hard. It's been 2 years. And basically, she broke me. Maybe that's why I started this channel. I do these stupid videos. I don't know. But sorry to get personal. Let's look at comics, because comics are good. So let's check out the first issue. Okay, right off the bat, Bernie Wrightson cover. This is a small black and white publisher. And Bernie Wrightson was barely doing anything for the big two. He was, but I don't know how they got this. It's a really nice cover, too. Kind of interestingly colored by Paul Mounts. I don't know if you remember that guy. He was one of the early painterly colorists when that was a new thing, when the prestige format comics were coming out in the 80s and the Baxter paper. He was one of the early adopters of like the painted color. So it's kind of interesting, maybe a little garish, but kind of neat. Beautiful cover though, all around. This is a very interesting horror anthology. Almost all, I don't know if it was Valerie Jones's editing, but almost all the stories are very odd for horror comics. So our first story here is The Call. And the story is by James Robert Smith. I'd never heard of that guy. The art is by Christopher Schenk, who I think I've heard of, but I wish I heard of him more or saw him more. It's pretty good. He just does the pencil art. The inks are by Ken Hooper, who I remember that guy inking tons of stuff in the 80s, like him for black and white companies. I don't remember him ever being that good, though. So maybe Christopher Schenk is even better without this Ken Hooper guy inking him. This is a very strange story about this little boy who grows up on the Atlantic coast. He's fascinated by the ocean. Ever since he was a little kid, he just stands at the shore staring at the ocean day in, day out, hour after hour. It just has a siren call to him. His mother's a little worried about it. It is kind of disturbing. The father, though, he's an oceanographer. So that's why they live near the coast, because he's always doing, studies of marine creatures. He thinks it's great that his son seems fascinated by the ocean. He's just all happy about it. He's just like, it's great. Maybe he'll grow up to be like his old man. And we see him grow up. And now he's a young man. One day he's on the beach, right around when he's 16, and this beautiful woman in a bikini walks up to him. But he's afraid. And all of a sudden, there's like this piercing, strange calling in his head. It actually hurts. It's like a bizarre music rattling his brain. As if she was the transmitter beaming this monstrous sound into his head. She says, "Do you know?" That's what she asks him. Just, "Do you know?" And he says, "No, I don't know what you're talking about." She says, "Soon." And then she's gone. So after that, he has all these crazy dreams about that woman, being underwater with her. And so one morning he rose really early and he ran out to the shore. And the woman's there, totally naked. And the sea is like seething. It's crazy waves. But she's in the middle of it, just standing there. And he takes off his clothes and goes out to meet her. And they slip underwater. And they're embracing. Sorry about that. I need some water. Before we continue with the story, I just want to say, there's some pretty nice art. These like wash tones. So maybe that's Ken Hooper. Maybe I shouldn't have poo-pooed him, or hoo-hooped him. But, nice wash tones. For like a cheap black and white comic, this is pretty nice art. And when he looks down, he sees this horrible, almost Lovecraftian monster. And as he tries to escape this monster, the woman is kind of holding him back. Her grip is far stronger than he imagined. She's like scratching his arms, like trying to keep him back. Finally, he breaks free, and he almost makes it to the surface. And then all these like crazy tentacles. I like this image a lot. That's a really interesting image. So these tentacles block his way. But then the tentacles just go through his body as if they're specters. And he looks down, and the woman's eyes have this horror in them. The fact that she's going to be alone for all eternity. So it's almost like she's this ghost who is captive for all eternity in this, nether region of the ocean. And she wanted someone to share with her. That's why she kind of seduced him. So he makes it to the surface and crawls back to the shore. His father finds him. And his father finds little organisms on him that he's never seen before. So this was a truly alien creature, even though it almost seems like a dream. There was puncture wounds on his arms and legs. And his father never talked about this event ever again. And after that, the kid was cured of his fascination with the ocean. And then I don't understand this ending at all. It says, and while they found her clothes shed on the beach, my mother's body never did wash ashore. So, that woman in the bikini was his mother? I don't know. It's a very dumb ending. I know I'm kind of dense, and maybe I didn't catch a clue, but it just doesn't make any sense that he didn't recognize his mother as the person on the beach who he was embracing, and there's no implication that the mother had some, I don't know, that she was some kind of ghost or something, a sea ghost, a sea hag, if you will. So I don't get this ending at all. It is very creepy and evocative and dreamlike. So in a way, I almost don't mind that I read it. It's kind of interesting. But this ending is, I don't know. Okay, guys, though. This next one, which has an equally kind of weird ending. But man, this is some beautiful stuff. It's called Spurs, written by Stephen Bissette and drawn by Alex Niño. Once again, this little black and white company has Alex Niño drawn for him. He was drawn for heavy metal and, like anywhere he wanted to draw. But somehow they got Alex Niño. This is partially why I think maybe Valerie Jones worked at Warren and she has connections with these foreign artists, So the story begins, it's like the Old West. And apparently this little kid Mike is missing. And also this crazy Mexican named Tuco. They call him the Crazy Mex. And they killed Mike's father, Silas. They find him just completely, almost like an animal killed him. Very savagely murdered. So this one guy, who I don't know his name, he says, get the posse ready. We're going after Tuco. And now we cut away to Mike and Tuco. Mike asks him, he says, Tuco, I heard fighting back there. You didn't hurt my paw, did you? And Tuco's just this weird character. And he basically says, oh, no, I wouldn't. I told you nothing would happen. I promised you. Nothing happened. We just had a disagreement. I had to knock him down. So somehow this guy Tuco, I think, is like almost like, I don't know, charmed this little kid to thinking he's his friend. And he convinced him, like, oh, we should go. We should run away. So he's like, we're going to go in this barn. We'll get out of this snowstorm. We'll get warm up. I've got some bottles of booze. And you'll meet my friend Bull. And so Bull comes out, and his face is incredibly scarred. And Tuco says that, he had an accident. He got a face full of buckshot. And he gives Bull some booze to keep warm. And Tuco says, yeah, he needs his bottle these days. He gets these crazy thoughts in his head. It makes him crazy. And then he says, time was when Bull, he was all there, and all we needed was each other. Those were good times, right, Bull? And Bull kind of agrees. He said, yeah, we would ride together, take whatever we needed, money, women. So these guys are bad guys. And Steve Bissette, if you don't know, on top of many other great accomplishments in comic books, he edited the horror anthology Taboo, which was like trying to break horror away from that EC mold of the shock ending, more disturbing adult horror. And this sums this up. This should be in Taboo, because there's no supernatural stuff in this story. There's no mummies or werewolves, but it is so horrific. Just the just basically what humans can do and how they are. And then he says something about, he says, yeah, when I think of the hijo de puta who beat Bull's skull in with a rifle butt. And Mike says, I thought you said it was buckshot to his face. And he says, what does it matter? And then he gives the little kid booze. He's like, hey, drink with us. Drink, boy. And then Bull wakes up in the middle of the night and he's screaming, it hurts, Tuco, no more. And actually, I think he's talking in his sleep. He's having a nightmare. And Tuco kicks him in the face and says, wake up, burro. Come on, let's go outside. We'll sing a song and take a walk. And this is where it gets really fucking odd. Bull says, don't hurt me, Tuco. You can take me now. And Tuco keeps singing this song. And Bull says again, you can have me now. And Tuco says, have you? I'll steal a woman if I want. Or use the little boy, the chulito, if I can't wait. And he says, no, not the boy. I'm still good for you. You and me, Tuco. He says, shut up, I'm sick of your whining. And he keeps kicking him with his spurs on. And Bull says, no, Tuco, I need you. Don't you need Bull? And he says, now that I have the boy, you're less than a burro to me. We finish it now. And he continues to just kick him and with the spurs. So Bull already has a scarred face, and now he's bleeding all over in his face, crying. Look at this body language here, this crazy kick. God, Alex Niño stuff. And the wash tones are so nice in this. So expertly placed. It's like, I mean, different than most guys would do it. It's very Alex Niño. And then Tuco says, Mike, wake up. Mike's the little kid. He says, a posse's here. We've got to slip out. So somehow this kid is under a spell. He's not like, I want to go home to my dad. He's just like, okay, yeah, I'm with you, Tuco. And so the posse shows up after they ride out. And they're like, yep, they were here all right. And they find Bull all torn up. And the posse realizes that the snow is going to cover the tracks, and they probably lost Tuco. And this guy says, looks like Tuco had his way with this one. You figure they didn't have no further use for this feller? And it's like, I know it doesn't necessarily work as a good story. It's just this little, like, glimpse into this fucking weird situation. But I didn't know, like, when I was done, I was like, what? That's the end? But just thinking about all of this is, like, so horrific. Just how fucking, wow, I just had a revelation. I rarely talk about my personal life. I was talking about still thinking about a violent woman that I used to date. And that's what this is. Like this poor fucker Bull. I guess he was like Tuco's catamite or whatever. I guess lover in a sick way. And the fact that even though he knows Tuco, even while Tuco was savagely beating him, he's still like, oh, I could still, whatever, please you. And then, on top of that, the fact that this completely psychotic, evil guy Tuco is now riding off with this little boy, and what's going to happen. And that's how it leaves. That's the end. So we have no idea what's going to happen, though it's probably not good. So this is like very Steve Bissette, like a different kind of horror. This is so different than like, Hal Feldstein, EC horror comic or any Warren or whatever. This is kind of interesting. He says, the writer wishes to thank Benito Ruiz and Dick Giordano for their help with the story 10 years ago. So I guess when he was fresh out of the Kubert School in 1979, he was already thinking about this story. And those guys helped him. But, I don't know if this is a great story, but it is one of the most disturbing things I've ever read. It is... Oh, God. Okay, now we have The Ninth Skeleton. And this is kind of a revelation, too. So, pencils are by Tom Yeats, another Kubert School graduate, of course. He's done many things. But you wouldn't even know it, because the finishes, I gotta get his name. I forgot it already. Something Bright. John B. Bright. And so it takes on this whole, like, almost like John J. Muff, Kent Williams, all those 80s painterly artists, has this thing going on. And this is, once again, another very odd story. I don't know if it's Valerie Jones had a weird editorial sensibility, and she was asking for these kind of anomalous, bizarre stories that don't fit the normal kind of pattern of your average short story in a comic. But once again, another odd one. So we see this guy, and he has an appointment to meet his girlfriend Guinevere. They were basically going to get married, but Guinevere's parents do not like this guy. And so now they have to meet in secret. They have a meeting place in the woods. And it's just like 2 miles from his cabin, so he's heading out, happy to see Guinevere. And then all of a sudden, he gets lost. This is a forest that he grew up in. So something's going on. The trees don't look right. There's these outcroppings of rock. He's like, where am I? He sees these weird footprints. And of course, he's starting to feel trepidation. He's just like, what the hell's going on? Now, like a lot of these painterly artists, they're not necessarily the best artists, like that face. But this is a pretty good-looking comic with his, I don't know, he's using all kinds of techniques. I don't know, wash, just really interesting stuff. And then so he's completely lost in this familiar wood that he grew up in. And he comes upon this place where there's all these, like, stone cairns. He almost suspects or knows that they're basically some kind of funeral headstone, but very just primordial. And he sees these weird glyphs on them. And just by seeing them and touching them, he gets this awful sense of antiquity about them. It almost smacks of Lovecraft, where some ancient elders made these, like pre-human elders. And then he looks over and he sees a skeleton, and he realizes that was the footprints I saw. It was like basically a skeleton foot. Because he recognized the footprint, but he couldn't quite fathom. Because, if you saw a skeleton footprint, you'd be like, oh, what kind of animal is this? But it's actually the skeleton, and it's holding the skeleton of an infant in its arms. And he could tell just by the way the skeleton was walking that it had a feminine grace. So it was a woman holding this infant. And it doesn't attack him or anything, but he's filled with this complete and utter sense of fear from seeing this. Now, I was talking about the techniques he used. Look at these pictures of the skeleton. It is some amazing effects going on here, like just in black and white art. This looks amazing to me. Like, I don't know how he did it. Probably lots of whiteout, I think. Kind of using whiteout and ink in unison. I don't know. I'm not an artist. But it looks very odd for a black and white, cheap newsprint page. It's like, whoa, what an effect. It looks very otherworldly. And so finally the skeleton disappears. And when he looks at one of the headstones, there's a freshly dug grave there. And he looks over, and the skeleton's back, and it's tugging at his sleeve. And it basically thrusts him into the grave. In his mind, though, it feels like he's plunging endlessly into this pit. And then he wakes up. It was all a dream. And he's in Guinevere's arms. And, of course, she's just like, "What on earth's the matter with you, Herbert?" Which I think is the name of a major H.P. Lovecraft protagonist, right? The guy from Reanimator? Is his name Herbert? She said, "You were standing in a daze and it's as if you couldn't hear or see me. And I really thought you were going to faint when I touched your arm." So not much of a story. But just the way it's told and this art, it is definitely not your average horror comic story. It's memorable. I gotta say, that last panel, that picture, that drawing of Guinevere, that's some gorgeous artwork. I don't know what happened to this guy, this Bright guy, John B. Bright. I can't believe he didn't get more work. Maybe he did. I just don't know. I looked it up. I mean, I didn't do much research, but I looked up his name on Grand Comics database, and there's nothing. Interesting, very interesting. And this back cover is drawn by Valerie Jones, the editor, and inked by Christopher Schenck, the guy who drew the first story. Not very good. Kind of weird. These heads are too big for the bodies. But it's very odd, though. I don't know what's going on here. I don't think I want to know. So now we have Asylum number 2. And this beautiful John J. Muff cover. I don't know why or how they got the permission to use Al Pacino's likeness for this cover, but they did. That's Al Pacino, right? Totally looks like him. But still, nonetheless, beautiful John J. Muff, as he's wont to do. John J. Muff is always drawing beautiful stuff. So we start off with Death Disenchanted. And this is like kind of a humorous story. It's actually kind of funny. And it's written by Fred Schiller. That guy, Fred Schiller, he did a lot of stuff for Eclipse and stuff and other black and white, 80s independent companies. But the art's by Kyle Baker. And I guess in 1989, Kyle Baker was already like the Kyle Baker, at least that we knew then, like Cowboy Wally, Why I Hate Saturn. But this is really nice, fun art. He's definitely removed from his like Marvel days of drawing the New Mutants and stuff. So it starts off with, we see this little old lady about to get hit by a truck, and it says, "This is 93-year-old Emily Gentilla's last day on Earth. Her number's up." And we see Death driving the truck. And he's just like, okay, one more notch on my belt today. I got another one. But then all of a sudden she falls into a manhole and the truck goes right by her. And Death is like, "I missed? I never miss." And then A little later, we see this old lady, and now Death has a giant piano hanging from a wire, and he's going to drop it on her head. And these doors open up, these basement doors, and knock her out of the way. And Death is like, what the fuck? So this keeps happening. And fate keeps getting in the way of Death taking this woman who's supposed to be dead. She's supposed to, be taken by Death. And then he just is like, fuck it. I got a missile. So I don't know how you get a missile in the middle of New York City, but he does. And once again, this old lady trips, misses the trajectory of the missile, and we see the missile hit the World Trade Centers, and they knock over. I guess a little prescient there. And then Death is just sitting there crying, basically like, what the hell's going on? I'm washed up. I can't even take this one little old lady. And she sees him and she says, oh, young man, what's the matter? Why don't you come to my house? I'll make you some nice tea. And Death is sitting there thinking, I'm a total disgrace. And then he just crumbles. He says, killed by kindness. So this old lady, this nice little old lady, inadvertently kills Death. And then it's almost like an echo of the first page. This is Emily Gentilla's last day on Earth. Soon she'll be casting in her chips. All these euphemisms for dying. She'll take her final curtain call. And this time, even though Death is gone, I guess just fate now really wants her dead. There's an airplane crashing into her, an anvil about to fall on her head, a steamroller heading towards her, high voltage wires in her path, and a lion or a tiger has escaped from the New York Zoo truck and is about to probably tear her throat out. Kind of a cute little story. I like that one. And I love this era of Kyle Baker art. It's just really nice. Okay. Next we have Tommy. Let me double check the writer. Yeah, it's that James Robert Smith again. And art by Mike Hoffman. And, Mike Hoffman draws in many different styles. Sometimes he draws cartoony. Sometimes he draws very slick. This shit is slicker than grease. Look at this. It's almost like black and white painted art. Maybe it was full color painted art and they just printed it because they couldn't afford color. And once again, this is another very odd, subtle horror comic. So apparently this guy, his son's in the hospital because he had some car up on blocks that he was working on. This guy's a mechanic. And I guess the car fell on the kid. The kid was playing around the car. It fell off its blocks. He didn't properly, mount it. So, of course, he's racked with guilt. His son's in the hospital. He might not make it. He calls up his wife at the hospital, who's there. And it sounds good. He's off the respirator. And he's coming out of his coma. Well, not that great, but better than not. But, man, this art is really nice. This Mike Hoffman. Mike Hoffman, I think, is one of the unsung heroes of comics. Everything he does is really good. But I don't think most people even know his name, most comic fans. And he never did anything like high profile. He's just pops up in all these weird little indie comics. Definitely did a lot of great stuff in Taboo. It's almost like he's haunted by the car, the image of the car. Like there's the ghost of the car that killed his son, injured his son. Because they moved the car once it happened. And so when he makes it to the hospital to join his wife, the news seems pretty good. And the doctor's like, yeah, things are looking A-okay. So they say, we want to see him. And this father, his name's Harry, something is like just nagging at him as he's with his son. He'd think he'd be overjoyed to see his son doing okay. But something's nagging at him. And that night he goes into his little tool shed. And later on that night, after he goes to sleep, something woke him up. A little noise. And the car is back. Almost like this car specter. So he runs outside to see what's going on. And it's almost like he's looking into the past. He sees his son playing on the car. And the car falls on top of him. When he looks back at the house, the son, who is now home and well, he sees his son looking at him through the window. And it says, Harry wept, and for a long, long time he did not accept the way things were. And that's it. So, I mean, yeah, once again, maybe not the best story. In fact, it's barely a story. It's very odd. But just its oddness, I'm fascinated by the story. Like, that's it. So the kid was almost killed by this car, and then the father has a vision of it happening. I don't know. It's just very odd. The art's beautiful, though. Very nice. So this one's, once again, very odd story. This is Dreams of My Brother by James Robert Smith again and John Estes. John Estes was another one of those 80s guys who got on the painted comics bandwagon. So this has a painterly feel to it, even though it's black and white. And so it starts off, among my brother's dreams are these. And it's just this pretty interesting, weird dream described. About his brother driving this car, and there's a dead woman in the back seat. All of the cars in the freeway have dead women in the back seat in bags. And then the woman wakes up, or is reanimated, takes off the whatever canvas sack that's over her. And, of course, he's terrified. He can't even turn back and face her. These pages are sticking together. Nope. And then it's another dream of another one of his brother's dreams. He's walking near a stream. He sees this weird dog kind of coated in clay. And so he breaks the clay off. And then he's kind of washing the clay off in the stream, and he loses the grip on the dog, and he falls under the water. He can't swim. So the guy dives in until he's swept away by the current, and he's drowning. Finally, he gasps. And now it's a totally different dream. And for some reason, this brother knows all of his dreams. And his brother's in a library, a very sumptuous looking room. And he hears this like scratching at the door. He opens it up, and all these horrible insects, thousands of them, fly in and start biting him until he jumps out the window. And then they put him in a coffin, and he screams. Another, 2 pages later, my brother is 15 again. He lies on the sloped roof of the house. And he sees this horrible creature. And the creature leaps at him. And he's like, I'm as good as dead. but it's just another dream. And then the last 2 pages, awake, my brother. And he's in this weird, like, kind of antiseptic room. His brother turns his head to see me. And then finally the narrator is revealed to us. I am a pink and bloated orb, flesh only, that has lain at his side for a long time. My lips are things of string and sinew that hand in warm rivulets from the tiny holes they have bored into his skull to strategic points about his brain. The brother tries to scream, and the monstrous brother basically lulls him into sleep using his tendrils, and another dream begins. Fucking crazy weird story. So apparently this monstrous brother is feeding off of the dreams of his brother, and whenever he wakes up, he's in this horrible clinical room. He realizes, like, oh, this is what's really going on. But for the most part, he's just constantly dreaming these horrible dreams. That is just a very bizarre horror story. But when you think about it, it's like, that is truly horrifying. It's more horrifying than a mummy chasing you. Yeah. Pretty nice art. John Estes is always a little inconsistent. You know, like, he's got chops. He can do painterly art, and I've seen his full color stuff. But then sometimes there'll be just the faces will be off, you know. And here we have a pretty nice back cover by Ken Meyer Jr. I like this negative space here, and this is kind of a nice drawing. Ken Meyer Jr., once again, another of those early adopters of painted comics. And wasn't the best artist, but, you know, like a broken clock. He was pretty good sometimes. He was actually pretty good most of the time. But with his skill level, you'd think it'd be better. But he's like one of those guys, like, yeah, I know how to paint and make fancy art, but I, never really learned how to draw that well. And, okay, that sounds too harsh. He draws pretty good, pretty damn good. But just, some of the faces are off, whatever. So there you go, guys. A very odd comic. I just bought this one for the first time. I bought this one after 20 years of owning this one. And I found this at the Excalibur comic sale 2 weeks ago. I was like, I gotta get that. And I'm glad I did, because these comics are very odd. They're not the best comics. It's not like I read these and I was like, whoa, these comics are awesome. But I can't think of any other comic that just kind of filled me with quandary. Like very odd writing in these, very different, and of course a lot of really nice art. And just look at these covers. It's some beautiful shit. So I'm sure these were in quarter bins for decades. I'm sure they went right to the quarter bin as soon as they came out. I don't think anybody gave a shit about these. So I'm sure they're pretty cheap if you want to find them. I don't know if you want to find them. It seems like a very particular taste would like these comics. And I guess I'm one of those people. Like I said, I don't know if I love them, but I'm really glad I own these and read them, because, yeah, this is all these writers. They're all different writers, but they're all writing these weird stories, like almost unlike any other comic stories I've ever read. So kind of interesting, these 2 issues of Asylum. And maybe in a year or so, I'll look at those other Asylums. They got a lot of nice stuff, but totally different publisher, different editor, everything. So I hope you guys like looking at these, and I hope to see you next time here at the herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies.